We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Monday. We're starting another week, a week and a month that I think is going to be fucking absolutely crazy with all the things that have to be tended to by Congress, by Trump, by those of us in the communities all around the country. And we're fortunate to have Tony with us. Tony, of course, is from South Carolina. He's a former military guy. He's an old retired guy like me now. But even though we're old military people, we were just talking about it before, you young guy, we still can fuck you up. Just back off.
Well, Happy New Year, Mike, and Happy New Year to the audience. It's good to see
Yeah.
you all again. I
Yeah.
don't come
Happy.
on, too often, but when I love coming on.
Well, you're more than welcome anytime. Anytime you want to come on, just let me know. You know that. You just text me and
Uh,
and we do it. Obviously, the first thing we should talk about going into this week is this whole Venezuela thing. It was a surprise, but it wasn't a surprise. This whole thing kind of ramped up. It first was shooting fishing boats in the ocean, killing innocent people, then sending the armada down to Venezuela to what happened a couple nights ago, where he goes in and he's bombing um, inland in Venezuela. They go in and they kidnap, literally kidnap, the president and the president's wife and haul them out of Venezuela. As a former military guy, what was your first thought when you heard
right.
that was happening?
Yeah, so I have a few thoughts. First of all, I'm a retired naval officer. I've been on that aircraft carrier doing operations. I was on an admiral's staff, mostly operating in the Pacific. Um, Tactically, the military was brilliant. This just shows the world what the U.S. military can do when it's planned. So, there was this thought that Venezuela had received from Russia a lot of anti-air missiles and radars and things. They were brilliantly blocked by jammers, and this comes down to training. We're very well trained. Their operators, instead of shutting off their radars, turn their radars all up in an effort to cut through the jamming. Well, what comes after the jamming? Anti-radiation missiles that track down radars and blow the hell out of them. I don't know that they have anything left after all that. Again, it comes down to training. So tactically, it was and then with Delta Force going in with some law enforcement off the carriers or any of the amphibs that are out there, which are really small carriers. It was just brilliantly executed. No one killed. Everybody came home, and
Well,
Maduro captured.
no one killed on our side. There were
No,
80 to 100, maybe more people killed in Venezuela, and some of them were innocent
yeah,
civilians.
you
So,
can't do an operation this size without casualties. It's just that
yeah.
simple, and it's unfortunate. So now, tactically brilliant, strategically stupid. I think I think people will all agree that the president of Venezuela was corrupt, was evil, had essentially destroyed Venezuela as a country, was stealing its resources along with everybody's administration. So the proper way to do something like that is to, if you're going to do it, is to get the buy-in from his neighbors. A smart way to have done this, if you were going to do this, was to go in with some forces from Brazil, from Colombia, or anybody else that are nominal allies down there. But Trump, as always, had pissed off everybody down there. He placed the Colombians along with the Venezuelans, so they didn't do that. And then on top of it, to talk about we're going to run the country and we're going to steal their oil or take back their oil. It lets the cat out of the bag. But in my mind, the real objective of this was not so much to get Maduro. It was really to hide what was going to take Epstein and to take the Jack Smith testimony off of the news cycle and bury it. If you remember, like a week before, Jack Smith had testified, and
Yeah.
his testimony was brutal. The Epstein files were completely, even though they were being rushed outward in a haphazard manner, done purposely that way, by the way, they were causing wound after wound after wound, day in and day out. So how do you change the subject? Well, you do this, you do a pseudo invasion, and you keep that in the news cycle as long as you can. So, he's still talking about Venezuela, and today he started talking about once again talking about Greenland. Um, I can tell you, the military will more than likely never attack Greenland. There will never be a military operation against a NATO ally. That will cross the boundary. This operation against the president of Venezuela is reminiscent of what we did with Noriega in Panama. And so there's
Yeah.
precedent. There's precedent for this kind of law enforcement military operation. Should we have done it? If it done correctly with the buy-in of the Congress, with going in with some allies, you could make a case that of doing it. So where does this leave us? Well, the Maduro's administration is still in power. Nothing
Well,
has been changed
exactly.
there. They're still
If you
there.
want if you want regime change, you got to take all the regime. Now you got
Yeah.
a vice president who's his vice president who's in power now. We've got the Defense Department, which was Maduro's, is still in power. If you really were trying to make a regime change, you need to take all those motherfuckers out of there, right?
Right, exactly. This is not. You have to do it smart, though. You can't do it the way we did in Iraq, where we go in, we take over the country, and then basically disband the military, which then became the insurgents against us. But there's a way of doing all this, and the first thing would have been to go ahead and recognize the actually elected folks from the last election. They were elected by the people. They had some legitimacy, and now they're being sidelined. So I don't, I can't. Well, anything that Trump touches, it makes no sense generally. There's no, there's no strategic sense of why we're doing what we're doing and how we're going about doing it. So what do I think is going to happen? Well, I don't think the oil companies are going to go in there. I
No.
mean, to spend billions and be constantly attacked. I don't think, I don't know, but I don't think he'll put boots on the ground. We're talking about millions of people. The military will just melt into the jungles, just like in Vietnam, or just disappear into the population, which is a big population. Caracas is not a small city. So I just don't see the boots on the ground. So how we're going to run the country, I don't know. Now I do see some kind of agreement with the current government, which changes nothing for the people of Venezuela. And all it does is it gives us a black eye in the rest of the hemisphere. And we are back to 1908, Marines on various islands, doing regime change throughout the Caribbean and South America and Latin America. It's not going to work. They already have a long memory of American intervention in the last couple of centuries. So
Yeah.
this is just stupidity. Will Congress do anything? No, probably not. The Republicans are, as usual, have tucked their tails and are saying, "What a great and smart move by the President of the United States." The Democrats are up in arms. I I don't know what's going to happen. Really, nothing's going to happen until we change the Congress a little bit in the upcoming midterms.
Well, I think people make the mistake when it comes to Venezuela or anything like these sorts of things to think that Donald Trump has any strategy or any forethought in anything that's going on. To me, this wasn't about drugs clearly because he pardoned the Honduran president who was the biggest drug trafficker in this country, 400,000 pounds of cocaine coming into this country, and he pardons him. It's not about drugs. And like you say, with the oil situation, unless Donald Trump is really uninitiated, he has to know that the oil companies aren't going to go in there. But he's pretty simple minded, so he may think they are because also the one that said, drill, baby, drill. And guess what? They're not drilling, baby, drilling. They're not doing fuck all because, Donald Trump thinks he can um, control the oil consumption and corner the market. But OPEC runs this shit, and they aren't going to allow Donald Trump to have any fucking control over this sort of thing. I think this all boils down to two things: a distraction, certainly, of Epstein and Jack Smith. I don't think it's going to work. We'll get into Tuesday of this week, and people will be back focused on Epstein because something else will come out. It'll be a temporary type of thing, but people aren't forgetting about Epstein's thing. But I think even more than that, this is so typical of Donald Trump. He's at a point where he's spinning out of control. He's flailing. So he's doing anything and everything, saying anything and everything he can say just to try to get his popularity back. So in his mind, he thinks this makes him look like a tough, a wartime president, even though he said he was a peacetime president. I think everything's a performance for a narcissist, and it's about trying to get people to support and be excited about him. But he's at a stage in his arc where it's just not working anymore. People are tired of the bullshit.
Oh yeah, I think people are exhausted. I mean, if oil prices based on Venezuela cooperating with the United States and putting their oil reserves and flooding the market and dropped barrels of oil to say $20 or $30 a barrel, that would devastate Russia. That's a good thing, right? Because so Russia
Yeah,
depends on oil to support its war efforts. But that's not going to happen. As you said, OPEC and the Venezuelans themselves, they have to make money, and making money is having oil at $50 to $70 a barrel. And so they're not going to let a flood of oil go in there. Now there might be a side deal of some sort with this current government where oil comes to the United States, and so our oil prices uh, maybe go down a little bit. But even our oil companies are not going to allow a flood of oil from Venezuela into the United States that'll affect their profits. So at the end of the day, he's a lame duck president. He gets his moment of say because he is the president, but the companies, the corporations, and others recognize he's his popularity is decreasing. This may give him a bump amongst his base, but it
that's it.
hasn't helped him. But it hasn't helped him with the independents and the rest. And there's enough coming out, and he doesn't have the kind of cabinet or the people or administration that can make this transition in Venezuela work in a positive way for the Venezuelan people that then becomes a positive for him and his administration publicly as a public affairs matter. So this is going, as you say, he's flailing. He's going to do anything to keep negative news and keep this in the news cycle. I just don't see how it's going to be possible. There's going to be more tranches of Epstein news coming out. They've released a minuscule amount of the data and the files that are available. And so now that we're talking about Venezuela, maybe the Justice Department will do us a favor and release a bigger set of stuff, which will then probably knock Venezuela off of the news cycle. I mean, it's all about news cycles for these guys.
It is, and there's. I've always said with Donald Trump, all you need is one bad picture, and they got 5 million documents just in the DOJ, and who knows what the Epstein estate has, and who knows who's going to leak something out of the DOJ because they might be the working rank and file, and they're just tired of this bullshit, and something will leak out. Donald Trump and the Epstein files. The Epstein files are like a snowball going down the hill. It gets bigger and bigger every day, and there's no way to fucking stop it. And Donald Trump is going to get run over, get his orange ass run over by this snowball, and it will take him out ultimately. It's not even hard to predict because we've seen things like this before, Watergate or whatever. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it doesn't stop till it fucking crashes on top of whoever is in front of it.
Yeah, I mean, the only way for him to stop that snowball from getting bigger is to create some other kind of snowball, which would mean a full out like war, total sending all the troops and boots on the ground in Venezuela with all the death and mayhem that comes from that. That'll stay in the news cycle for quite a bit. But at the same time, the MAGA world is splitting and furious. And you got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and a bunch of the other MAGA podcasters. They are not liking anything that's going on with the administration. They do not like Venezuela. They do not like foreign intervention, and they're going out and talking. And they're talking hard, and they are not happy with Trump. They can see him for what he is. I wish they'd seen him for what he was prior to his
Yeah.
election. But so it's going to be a chaotic, I would say for right now, probably a chaotic month of January as things start to sort themselves out. The Democrats are not going to let go of Epstein. At the same
Well,
time, they're going to attack him on Venezuela.
well, I think January is going to be one of the craziest months we've seen up to this point, and that's fucking saying something based on some of the things we've seen. He can take Venezuela. He can go with boots on the ground and get into a ground war in Venezuela. And yeah, it may have some impact of distraction, but there's two things working against him on that. First of all, um, and I don't mean this in literal terms, but that Epstein file thing, it's very sexy, very salacious, very sensational. People aren't going to let that go. Secondly, whatever he's doing to distract by having a war, that doesn't make it more positive for him. That just makes other people pissed off at him. So he loses even more ground by doing something like that. And that's where narcissists go. Everything they do now doesn't work. The bullshit stops. The gaslighting doesn't work. And that's the position he's in right now. So he wants to start a war, distract from the Epstein file. Okay, well the war will fucking kill you with half the country as well. He's in a no-win situation.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing, the Gang of Eight is a group of senators that by law are supposed to be involved in any kind of big military. And the Democrats on that Gang of Eight were all over the Sunday news shows. Not one word were they involved in this. And the Republicans in the Gang of Eight were being notified of what was going on, but the Democrats were kept in the dark. So there's going to be a lot more fighting. You're going to see a lot more divisiveness in the Senate. And yeah, you can't get more divisive than what you're seeing in the House of Representatives. So, yeah, politically, he's weakened himself. He hasn't made himself stronger. Politically, he is losing his base. It's slowly starting to fray at the edges. Politically, he's looking weak and he's looking desperate. And none of those are, and politically, regular folks are starting to notice he's done nothing for them. No prices have gone down. Healthcare costs are going to skyrocket. That's going to hit the news. It's certainly going to hit local news as people die because they can't afford health care. So he's a disaster. He's a walking plague on our country. And now folks, well, particularly the red-hatted type, are starting to see it.
Yeah. Well, and as I said, January is going to be a crazy one. They come back into session today as you're listening to this on Monday. Marjorie Taylor Greene's supposed to resign today, but she also said she's going to give the names of the co-conspirators on the House floor. So if she's going to do that, it's going to have to be today, or maybe Massey does it later, or maybe nobody does it. Then, of course, we've got to deal with the ACA subsidies being extended. They're going to vote on that this week in the House. And then it's a matter of what happens when it goes to the Senate and ultimately to Donald Trump. And if that weren't enough, you've got Venezuela, you've got the economy, you've got the deportations, you've got ICE all over the country, and at the end of the month, you got to keep the country open again. You got another CR you got to vote on, and the Democrats aren't really happy with the way things are going right now, especially if they don't extend the subsidies. So this is going to be one fucking crazy month.
Yeah, I mean, we're about a serious month and a half away to 2 months. We're going into primary season. Nothing gets done in Congress during primary season.
Yep.
And the Republicans are already panicking and trying to find their message, anything positive to come to spin for their voters. Um, I don't see a thing that they have. This has been probably the worst Congress, maybe in the history of all Congresses. It's been
Least
pretty bad.
productive in history. Least productive in history. And here's my question. Um, they're coming back in session today on January 5th. Why? The House has been
Why?
on vacation most of the time in this last session. They've been in their seats 87 days out of the whole session in a year. They can't pass a bill. They can't pass a budget. They have ridiculous hearings that they shouldn't even have, and they bend to everything Donald Trump tells them to do. The Republicans. it's like we don't have Congress anymore. It carries no weight, has no authority. They just pop in, get their 175,000 a year, and pop out back on vacation. Donald Trump has effectively, with Mike Johnson, uh, made at least the House of Representatives virtually impotent.
Well, and the Senate is not much further behind. The Senate isn't
No,
always in agreement with him. The senators are not answering questions. The senators are not holding open houses and for their
no,
for their populations. The Republicans are looking weak and feckless and cowardly, and they have nothing to run on. The Democrats are going to beat them over the head. If I were a Democrat in any place, I would be gathering all the people whose ACA rates have gone up 100 to 150%, and I would have those stories. My town halls would be filled with those kinds of stories, and media. I'd make sure the media was there to record them locally.
yeah.
So the DNC, now's the time to pick our candidates and get them out there running hard. We need personally. I'm a progressive, so I think we need more people in the mold of Plattner and Maine and ALC those and Crockett. That's what I think we need. They're already saying in Texas Crockett doesn't stand a chance. I think she stands a
That's
good chance personally.
when they say she has no chance and they laugh at her, that tells me they're terrified that she does have a chance.
Yeah, because she'll cause some damage. And I can't remember the name of the guy who's a pastor who's running also for that same seat. Um,
Calorico,
Tallarico.
young guy.
He's really good too. We can't go
He's
wrong
really
with either
good.
one. Yeah, that's going to be
No,
a hell of a primary. But the bottom line is, out of that primary, which will be televised and everything else, is going to come enough information against the Republicans that whichever of those two wins, I don't think they're going to fight it out between them. I really don't. And whoever of those wins is going to be in a good position to take Cornyn's seat. It's that simple. And the same thing is going to happen in Georgia. And across the country. Hopefully, the fight in the Democratic Party needs to kind of come to a close. And we need to now start seriously running for the midterms. Whoever we got, whether we got centrists or whether we got progressives, it doesn't matter.
well, I personally think we're in a period with the Democrats that we need a correction. We've been so far right, whether you're a centrist or progressive, in order to get this ship righted, get back in the lanes of traffic, we have to go progressive in order to even come close to bringing it to the middle. Ultimately, if that's where it's meant to be, um, and I think people are going to be more have more of an appetite for going progressive after all the egregious shit going on. I mean, we've talked about it before where, you had the Depression and the far right. And then when they came out of that, we had FDR and very progressive type things. That seems to be what happens in history. I think what's gone on up to this point is going to make it that much easier to go more progressive.
I would hope so. I mean, there should be no excuse not to now publicly embrace across the Democratic Party Medicare for all. Frankly,
Absolutely.
if I were a Republican, even a McCain type Republican, McCain, for all his faults as a conservative, I mean, he did propose finance reform. He did, he was willing to buck his own party many a time. I think if McCain were running today, I think he'd be right on board with big structural changes to healthcare. I really do believe that. And if Republicans wanted to have a chance of taking back their party, and we're talking about the old mainstream Republicans, they're going to need to make some changes to differentiate themselves from the MAGA base, because the MAGA base is just pure anarchy, no government of any sort, anytime, nothing but culture wars. They need to, if they want. I've heard rumors that the Bush family wants to retake the Republican Party with the help of like Mike Pence and some of the others, maybe Romney and some of those others. There's a movement afoot on that side to push MAGA out. I don't know if they can do that or not. And a good old war on that side of the aisle would be fine with me. But the on our side, we now going to have to settle this out. I think the centrists and the neolibs are going to have to accept some progressive ideas. I think we talked about the snowball going downhill. I think that's where we are in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, the progressive ideas are starting to snowball and get bigger and bigger. And the centrists need to get out of the way of those ideas.
Well, when you start taking away things from people like healthcare, like money, like childcare, and all this stuff, you're going to be see people get on the board of progressiveness pretty quick. When you start causing them pain and stress and troubles, they're going to want to fix, and they're going to be willing to go to the progressive way. I think universal health care. If well, this vote they're going to have in the House on extending the ACA, it's probably going to pass the House because they already got the discharge petition. They got 218 votes. Just a question is, are we going to have an Epstein files thing where they all vote for it because they don't want to be the ones that are voting against maintaining health care? And then it has to go to the Senate, and then it has to go to Donald Trump. So there's all kinds of hurdles this thing has to jump over. What do you think? Do you think they pull out the ACA subsidies or they just let the fucker burn?
I don't think it's going to get through the Senate. I think it barely passes the House. I think it gets to the Senate. The senators don't seem to give a shit, the Republicans, about the ACA whatsoever. They may propose, health savings plans or some bullshit like that, and that'll be what'll pass in the Senate because they control the Senate. So now we'll have two competing ideas that'll have to be reconciled, and they won't be reconciled. So, and on the House of Representatives, there'll be something passed, but it'll have more help. It'll have more like work requirements or some kind of anti-fraud thing, And so, and they'll use the excuse of the daycare centers in Minnesota as a reason for adding more protections into the bill, which will weaken it and make it less than it was. So
Yeah, but
I don't know.
that's all been debunked, and that kid's going to get
Oh
fucking
yeah,
sued into
yeah.
oblivion. Um, um, am I the only one that feels like if they allow the ACA to crash like this and 24 million people lose or can't afford their health care and it impacts other people, that is the final destruction of the Republican Party? I mean, you got overturning Roe v. Wade, you've got the economy, you've got the deportations, you got Venezuela. Everything is putting them in a position to get decimated in the midterms. But I think if you start taking away health care from people and the child care from people, it's fucking over. I mean, how could they survive that coming up to the midterms? And why don't the Republicans realize that? Am I crazy? Am I the only one that
No,
recognizes that?
I'm going to push back a little bit. I think that the money power on that side by the super wealthy, they'll take a hit. They'll take a hit in the midterms. They'll probably take a hit in 28 elections, and then they'll start to dangle the the objects that they always do in class wars. They'll come up with the shining objects that will distract people away from their own benefits. It's the playbook that they'll always use. That's how
But
Donald Trump got elected. There isn't going to be an end to the Republican Party. There might be a hiatus from power, but I'm not even sure that will. If you look at North Carolina for the first time ever has more Republicans registered than Democrats.
Mhm.
So, they might, and I say might be willing to make a change in the midterms. And then the presidential elections will come up. And I think they'll go home again. It just, people that you think have more sense than to be a Republican somehow don't. And people that you know are professional and smart, they just don't.
so
I,
you think they'd be willing to burn it down and take their hits for the next 6 years, 26 to 32,
hmm?
You think they'd be willing to do that just to try to maintain what they're doing? Because if they lose the midterms and they lose the presidency, a lot of the things that they've tried to get done are going to be taken away from them. So they're going to have to
Well,
build it up again. So,
maybe, maybe. Let's say that's true. 26 they lose, right? We get the House of Representatives, we narrowly don't gain the Senate. So basically it's a tie. We go to 28, they run JD, who's, I don't think he's going to be their nominee because you can't get a
no, I
more
don't think.
disliked individual. It'll be somebody else. They'll put, a billion, $2 billion into that race. And remember that they still have an edge in the electoral college. But let's just say we take it, all right, and a Democrat, maybe Gavin Newsom becomes the president. Now we get into the sausage making, where you would think that Gavin Newsom, who now maybe has both the Senate and the House of Representatives, would be able to get things done. Then, then it doesn't get done by the rules of the House and by the rules of the Senate. Not much gets taken away. We still,
Or, 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 or by the laziness of the Democrats. And this is what I've said too.
yes, yes,
as much
yes,
as you and I are pounding on the Republicans and people like us pounding on the
yes,
Republicans, that's why we have to keep in mind, say the Democrats win the House and the Senate in 2026. We now, and the Republicans aren't an issue because they've been kind of eradicated. As hard as we've been pounding on the Republicans, we now need to pound on the Democrats. They had
yes,
opportunities to codify Roe v. Wade and they didn't. So we
yes.
know they can get lazy and complacent. So we need to pound on those people. And when 2028 comes along, if we get a president, we still got to be working on these fuckers, making
That's right.
sure that their feet are held to the fire.
If
Otherwise, they'll get fat and lazy.
if the Democratic caucus is still ends up being, I don't know, 60% centrist and 40% progressives, it's not enough. And let's say
No.
the Speaker of the House is a Jeffries type guy, a centrist, right? Big money will go in there, Wall Street and the rest, and continue to lobby the way they've always lobbied. And so things that you think we should be able to do, like universal health care, won't happen. The same thing, maybe some road building and construction will happen. Maybe some regulation on AI could happen. Probably not much, but all the roadblocks are on our side too. They're bought and paid for as almost as bad as the Republicans. They'll pay lip service, but at the end of the day, when the phone rings, if it's you and me calling, they won't answer. If the phone rings and it's some billionaire calling, they'll pick up the phone.
Yeah. No, no, I'm well aware that the Democrats can be just as bad. It's not as rampant in the Democratic Party, but it's just as bad as the Republicans, unless we see a sea change, because we know there's going to be some primaries in the Democratic field with some
Thank God.
younger people,
Thank
and
God.
and that's why I think when Mondami was elected mayor of New York City, well, that's just one town in the whole country. Um, it was a red flag to a lot of Democratic establishment. People are now going toward people like Mondami, and we're seeing some of those people looking to primary some of the standard establishment Democrats. So we could see a sea change, maybe not a full changeover, but it would be the start of things to come with maybe younger people coming in. We need to get rid of the older people. The younger people need to come in, determine their own destiny, and we need to get more progressive. Um, and over and above beating the Republicans, we may see some more progressive movement in this midterms too.
I have two sons, and one's a school teacher, and one is in the army getting out, and one's 28, and one is 25. The one is it's a school teacher, is fully bought on board of progressive. He listens to, I don't listen. We listen to some of the same podcasts. One day he just woke up. The other son who was just visiting, I'm ashamed to say, seems to be pretty typical of people his age. Eh, uh, Nothing's going to change. I'll vote when I want to vote, and yeah, they're kind of the same, but I'll continue to listen to Joe Rogan and I'll stay in the middle. And, he's got no, he has no, and we talked to him and said, look, what your vote counts. It affects your family, it affects your soon to be wife's family, it affects a lot. And no, so what I'm saying is this is that Madami was great. But the fact is, New York is one of the hardest places to run, cities to run in the country. Chicago would be in that same league, and maybe Washington D.C. He's not going to get done as much as he wants, and it won't be because of Republicans that will be stopping him. It'll be because of the special interests in New York, the sanitation department, the police, his aldermen, and the rest. They all have their own issues and their own interests. And if their interests align with the mayor, great. If they don't, they'll resist him, and he won't be able to get anything done. So, a year from now, young people who are enthusiastic about him might be disheartened that he hasn't accomplished what he said he was going to accomplish. And it doesn't take much for young people to stop voting or to change their votes. We saw this in this last election. So the answer is we need to change out the elders. We need to change out the centrists. But we need the Democratic caucus to be 65% progressive and 35 or 45% centrist. And unfortunately, I think the moneyed interests that are interested in keeping the Democratic Party going are lean more towards a pro-business centrist than they do towards uh, the pro-progressives that we have.
I think the easiest way to start getting some change is if we get enough of a majority in the House and the Senate, if we could, at least as a starting point, get rid of Citizens United, that would help
Absolutely.
significantly.
Absolutely. Which means we have to do something about the Supreme Court. So that can't happen until 2028, right? So, even if we take over the Congress, they can pass some laws and restrain the current Supreme Court, but it's going to take a president to, I think, increase the size. If we did that, we have a chance of reversing a lot of the damage that this particular Supreme Court has done over the last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that's one of the first things that have to be attended to as soon as they're able to do that. We have three branches in our government, and if one branch is lame, it's hard to um, continue with democracy. All three branches have to be strong, legitimate, credible. At this point, we don't have a single branch that's credible or
No, we have the
legitimate. That's
exec. We have the executive. You're right.
yeah, and so we're kind of hanging by a thread in a very precarious position in terms of democracy. We still have democracy, but you couldn't tell by what's going on in this country.
No, no,
And I've said
I
many
agree.
times, I've said many times before, and I'm going to keep saying it so people understand it. Everything you're seeing that's going wrong, everything that Donald Trump has done, could have been stopped in an instant by the Republican Party in Congress. They chose not to do it. They chose not to stand with Donald Trump and against the American public. So when this is all done and Donald has a big dinner of a Big Mac, a quarter pounder with cheese, a fillet of fish,
And
fries,
French
and a
fries.
Diet Coke because he's watching it. When he keels over and croaks on that, and people are looking for some people to be accountable, grab any Republican out of Congress and they're fucking responsible.
No, you're exactly right. The thing about Trump, and maybe history will owe him a debt, is he proved that we need laws in place of norms. He has he
True.
has he has shown that norms are not the same thing, that norms can't stop a determined psychopath like him. He has shown the weakness in laws and guardrails. So whoever the next Congress is and whoever the next president is, they're going to have a hell of a job analyzing everything that has gone wrong in his 2 terms to see what can be tightened up, what can be guarded against, and what laws need to be put in place so someone like a Trump could never happen again. And there's so much to fix. I can't even imagine tackling that. And Republicans used to have competent cabinets, and he has an incompetent cabinet. So let's just hope the next Democrat gets the best of the best if he's president to come out there, because there's so much wrong in every single department, in every single sector of our democracy that needs to be repaired, holes patched up, rips mended back together again, because he has shown that our democracy is a fragile thing, and
Yeah.
only by the grace of his age and by the incompetence of himself and the incompetence of the people supporting him will we even survive.
Yeah, absolutely right. Had this been a group of people that had any wherewithal at all, we would be in trouble or absolutely done by now. Thank God he's a fucking idiot, and thank God the people he hired are idiots too. Otherwise, we might not even be in a position to fight back and grab anything and get back to normal at all. Donald Trump, when he stepped over the norms and the rules, and that set a precedent. And that precedent is that those norms and those rules and those theories don't mean shit. And I guarantee you, any future Republican president, any future Democratic president will use that to their advantage one way or another. So you're absolutely right. You've got to shore those things up. You've got to tighten those things up. You've got to make them laws. You've got to give the Supreme Court some some guardrails and some rules and some laws they have to follow. The presumption always was, well, he's president or he's on the Supreme Court. They'd never do that. Well, we found out they would do that given the right person at the right situation. So now we have to have those protections for this country, and hopefully the Democrats and the Republicans, for that matter, because the Republicans should be fearful of this too. Because if we get a Democratic president that does what Donald Trump did, they're going to be freaking the fuck out too. You need to tighten this up, and you need to take back Congress and give it some power. And the only way to do that is to limit the president.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a badly damaged man, but backed by almost unlimited money and by the
Yeah.
stupidity of the voters who got into this position of power. I think I want to think he's a rare occurrence rather than going to be a norm. I think that the next president, whoever the next president will be, will not run the government like he's run the government.
Well, hopefully
Um,
not.
but what is really troubling is the fact. Well, there's two facts. Number one, that a large segment of the population voted for him, that they didn't give a shit enough about the country or their families to look at this guy and go, not in 1,000 years. The second troubling fact is the bowing down of so many organizations, starting with the Republican Congress and moving on to law firms, universities, and
Yeah.
corporations.
Media.
Who would have expected that from anybody? How could that even be possible? You can look at him, you can see he's a sick old demented man. Why what would you be afraid of? Um, did I expect him to put a cabinet in this inept? Yeah, to be honest, you and I have been on enough times together. We knew he wasn't going to pick the best of the best. But
I
the
think we knew he couldn't pick the best of the best because when he picked people that were fairly competent last time around, it
good
ended
point,
badly for all of them. Nobody in their right mind would work for this clown after
good
what they
point.
experienced the first time around.
Good point. Good point. But I certainly didn't expect that he would have an infrastructure behind him to help him with these choices. He didn't know some of these people beforehand. It was the
Yeah.
Project 2025 MAGA people that had their own interests, that wanted to use him as a tool, that gave him the names of judges and the names of cabinet. Marco Rubio, I think his reputation is shot.
Oh,
Yeah,
I do too. He's done.
he's the only one up there that I can look at and go, I thought he was sane. And he's been cowed down and beaten down to the ground, and it's just a shadow. And there's some thought that he'll run in 28. I don't see it. The current thought is that JD Vance has an edge. he's so disliked and so sleazy, and he's just you look at him and he's like Ted Cruz. You look at him and go, "Wow, yeah, no, I can't do it." I mean, he won't be their standard bearer. He won't make it through the primaries.
Now,
I think Ted Cruz will beat him.
Marco Rubio is 54 years old. He's not young, but he's not old.
That's right.
Um, with his experience in the Senate, he'd be a likely prospect for a presidential candidate. But he's come off as such a pussy, such a kiss ass. I honestly believe, as well as you do, that he's ruined his career. I mean, he could have another 20 years in politics, but after this term, I think he's done. He's Nobody has any respect for the guy. Even the Republicans have to look at him and go, "What a pussy." We're not gonna.
Exactly. No,
He's
exactly.
he's ruined it.
I mean, and then you look at the rest of the cabinet. There's a good chance that the rest of them are going to be prosecuted. If
Absolutely.
we cannot elect another fucking Joe Biden kind in 28, can't be. It's got to be somebody
No.
who's going to go up there like an avenging angel, and then actually pick. Frankly, for me, I'd make Jack Smith the Attorney General.
Yeah.
I mean, day one, he'd be. Before that, I would announce he's going to be the Attorney General, and that would put the fucking fear of God into all the lawbreakers and frankly, a lot of the Republicans in the Congress. And I would give him free reign to go after the former cabinet. And if it's called weaponizing it, I call it law breaking being prosecuted. And Stephen Miller and Pat Bondi and Christy Nome and the rest are probably gonna end up prosecuted and may do some jail time.
Well, yeah, I've talked about this too. People say, well, they'll never go to jail because they're in powerful positions. John Mitchell went to jail. A lot of other people went to jail with
Yeah.
Richard Nixon's whole Watergate thing. And that
Oh,
was about
absolutely.
1/10 about the fucking crimes they're committing
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Pam Bondi and Cash Patel, if for nothing else, there's probably a million other things. But if for nothing else, this whole clear and blatant cover up of the Epstein files, that's enough to send them to fucking jail.
Absolutely. They're breaking the law just on that one thing they're breaking the law. There's so much else that they've broken the law on. Um, the only sad thing is, personally, at this point, I think Trump will die before he could be prosecuted for anything, to be honest. Statute of limitations will run out for his 2016 crimes. Um, I think he'll leave the White House and on his way to the helicopter to take him back down to Florida. He'll probably die before he gets up the steps. Is kind of what I think. So
You,
fine, we
you know, I,
can't go after him, but we can go after the rest of the Trump
I'm
organization.
I'm not worried about Donald Trump being prosecuted because he's 80 years old, and whether he's prosecuted or not, his time is short. He's going to die. And as long as this world can be rid of Donald Trump, I'll be happy with it. The two things I hope for, and what I think will happen with Donald Trump, because of him being in power and keeping us away from a lot of information from the Epstein files to his financial dealings to all this stuff. I think when he's done and there's no more power there, no more control or connection, I think we were going to see a flood of shit about Donald Trump, from his taxes to his grift during his presidency to the Epstein files. He will end up an embarrassment and a pariah. And if that's what we get from Donald Trump and he's dead on top of it, I'll take it. But the
Yeah,
other
yeah,
people around him, they need to be prosecuted, and they don't have any protections once Donald Trump's out of power and Pam Bondi isn't the attorney general. Once they're all gone, they're sitting ducks at this point because there's lots of evidence. I mean, Pam Bondi and Cash Patel covering up the Epstein files, we have all the evidence to show that they've done that already. As far as I'm concerned, they can go to trial and be prosecuted in about 15 minutes because it's all right there. We've got Pete Hegseth with national security issues, being involved in bombing Venezuela and those boats. That's going to come back to haunt some fucking people because those may be international fucking crimes as well as domestic crimes. Um, Will always talks about a tribunal. I don't know if that will be the case, but there is going to be some accountability. I think the people of this country will insist on the accountability.
Yeah, I think for the attack on removing the president of Venezuela, they're I think they can almost make a legal case, but the killings on the boats is certainly illegal by all standards.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if there'll be a tribunal, but I think the prosecutions will go and I want Trump, when Trump is dead, I want his family prosecuted. The crypto guys behind him that helped them make a lot of money, them prosecuted. I think they need to go back and look at these pardons and figure out ways to go back after some of these guys and re-prosecute them for something else if the pardon sticks. The January 6 people, they that was a blanket pardon. I mean, there already some are going back to jail for other events. I think that it just goes on. I can't even believe, it's maddening to think we still got 3 more years with this guy. It's only been a year.
Presumably,
Yeah, I
presumably
don't.
3 years.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think
I
he's
mean,
going to make it that long. I mean, have you seen him up on stage?
it
This
looks
motherfucker's
terrible.
in trouble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if he attacks or attempts to attack Greenland, I would almost hope that this would be the red line that can't be crossed, and that the Congress impeaches him and removes him from office. Attacking a NATO member has got to be. I can't imagine it not being that the senators of the Republican Party, there's no justification for it. I just can't see them doing it. Frankly, I can't see military flag officers actually doing that, to be honest with you. I think they'll resign in mass before they attack Greenland.
And I agree with you there, but there have been at least 10 things that have happened with Donald Trump in this first term, in this first year, that I keep thinking to myself, okay, this is going to be the bridge too far. You can't put people into concentration camps. They're not going to, Republicans aren't going to allow him to do that. They're not going to allow him to put on tariffs and tank the economy. They're not going to let him bomb Venezuela. That they're going to step up and they're going to realize he's a liability, no longer an asset, and they're just going to kick him out of there. But every time I think that, I am surprised by the cowardice of the Republican Party or the complicitness with the Republican Party. I don't know which it is. Maybe it's both. But I've been waiting. I thought they would step back from Donald Trump a lot earlier than they have, and they haven't yet. I don't know what to think about the Republican Party. They've gone way farther than I thought they'd allow Donald Trump to go.
I'm uh I'm sad because I
Yeah.
remember the Republican Party of Bob Dole. Bob Dole may have lost to Clinton, but the guy was a patriot. There is no doubt in my mind he was a better man than Bill Clinton ever was. And I am actually ashamed of my vote for Bill Clinton twice, to be honest with you. I think I think Dole and was it McCain who ran against him? Both those guys were much better men than Bill Clinton. And the
Oh,
Epstein
I agree.
files, I think there's more will come out on that. Um, I am not a Hillary hater, except that I think Hillary should have divorced that son of a bitch a long time ago. But the Republican Party has been a total disappointment, and I don't know where their bottom is. I do think the bottom,
I don't either.
the basement, has got to be an attack on a NATO member. I can't imagine how they can stand there and let Greenland be attacked. I don't think they can. I can't see how they can stand there and watch dozens of flag officers and officers resign rather than carry out orders to attack Greenland. I gotta think that's a bottom. I can't even imagine Marco Rubio going. Well, I know he won't go along with it, but I can't imagine him staying in office while that happens because he right now is the Secretary of State. He's in charge of the CIA. I see. I can see that that's an actual bottom. That's my opinion, but I'm pretty confident that it can't happen. It won't happen. But anything else short of that, the concentration camps, all the rest of it, I'm aghast at poorly and how cowardly each individual Republican. I don't know how they can face their families, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. One of the places that they thought might be next might be Cuba, which is an interesting. I mean, what's to be gained in Cuba other than whatever performance value that he's getting out of it?
Yeah,
And I know
news cycle.
China's kind of tied into Cuba with a lot of things. There's going to come a point when he starts doing these international things where other bigger countries are going to get pissed off. You go to Greenland, you've got Denmark, who is part of NATO. You go to Cuba, China's not going to like having their toes stepped on. Even Venezuela, there's got to be some people that aren't too thrilled
China,
internationally about what he did there.
China has large investments in Venezuela. For a while there, they had a deal where the Venezuelans would send them 2 barrels of crude oil, and the Chinese would send them back 1 barrel of refined product, whatever that is, gasoline, diesel, what have you.
Right.
That fell apart because the Venezuelans couldn't manage it. But they have spent money on their ports. They have spent money, and so have the Russians. I mean, both big countries have spent. I can't see them. I can't see them stepping up militarily for Cuba or Venezuela. To be honest, if they were going to do it for Venezuela, they would have already done so. So, and I
Yeah.
can't see them doing it for Cuba. I do think Cuba will probably or could be their next target. The Cubans are basically have a military somewhat like Venezuela. Most of their arms are Russian made arms. We haven't heard much from them, but they're a similar kind of country with basically a despotic pseudo communist, leaning government. But the fact is, it's if he wants to stay in the news cycle, that would be the next place to intervene.
Politically speaking, other than attention, what would be the value of trying to take control of Cuba? I mean,
No, there's no value. They don't have oil. The only resource that they have is they have a pretty first-rate medical um, infrastructure, or they had. I don't know if they still do. The Cuban people tend to be like the Puerto Ricans. They tend to be industrious and kind and nice. And of course, Cuba used to be the place to go for nightlife back in the 40s, right?
40s and
Before,
50s, yeah.
yeah, before Castro took over. So I think personally, and this is just me personally speaking, I think we should never let Cuba go on its own as its own country. I think we should have made it a state. I believe that about Puerto Rico. I believe that about Micronesia, Guam, um, American Solomons, American Tahiti, and the rest. I think so. Having said that, from a Western Hemispheric thing, the Cubans are not particularly well liked anyway in South America. There's a big mass of Cubans in the United States who would be perfectly fine and who were Republicans and still are Republicans. It would be great to see intervention in Cuba. But Cuba, like Venezuela, is not a place where you send a big land army in there and expect to have no casualties. I mean, it's a big, big country. And I think the Cuban government probably has it riddled with depots and military resources all throughout the island. It wouldn't be an easy place to conquer.
Well, you look at Venezuela, and like I've said before, with everything Donald Trump, it's a performance. It doesn't appear as though Donald Trump has any plan for Venezuela. Oh, we're going to run it, and then Marco Rubio comes out. Well, we're not really going to run it, but you don't get rid of the whole regime. He says the new president, the former vice president, has said he'll do whatever Donald Trump says, and then she comes out and says, "Well, no, not exactly, because we still believe." The president is the president. There's going to be some pushback there. There is, he thinks just because he grabbed Maduro, he can run that place. And that's not how it's going to be exactly. There may be some pushback when he tries to get down there and send oil companies down there. For what reason, we don't know. I don't think the oil companies even go down there. There's no point. We produce more oil in the United States than anybody in the world. It's not like we have a shortage of fucking oil. Uh, it may be involving money, but like I say, OPEC controls costs and shit like that. But Donald Trump doesn't ever do anything with any foresight. He doesn't look beyond the end of his nose. I personally think he's going to do what he did in Venezuela, and then it'll kind of fade because he won't really do much with it, and he needs the quick news cycle. He needs the noise. He needs the explosions. Uh, but he's not good with substance in anything he fucking does. I mean,
No,
take a
he's not.
look at his healthcare plan.
He's not intelligent. He
No.
has no. He's basically a third grader at best. But with a temper, and everybody falls for his temper. He's got no intelligence. He's got no foresight. He's got no strategic thinking. He's got no goals. He's got nothing except, he's a devious son of a bitch for making money. He was able to run as an outsider, but, and against, the elites. And now, MAGA is seeing that that's who he's hanging around with and catering to are the elites. And
Well, at this point,
so,
he's just trying to stay alive.
yeah,
That's why
yeah,
it's so scattered in what he's doing. He's doing
yeah,
anything to make himself popular again, and it's not working. And the more he does, it's going to make it worse for him. He's his own self-defeating behavior. I'm a
yeah,
bomb Venezuela, then everybody will love me. Well, wait,
yeah.
nobody loves me now. Nobody likes this, not even MAGA. So then he's going to try something else. He just he keeps throwing shit against the wall, hoping it will stick. And he's at a stage in his arc, nothing's going to stick anymore because people think he's an idiot.
Yeah, he's lost Joe Rogan. Rogan called him an idiot the other day.
Yeah.
So yeah, so then I don't listen to the right wing podcasters. Doesn't sound like they're that happy. So yeah, he's lost. It's going to be interesting. Let's see what happens in the polls this week and see if he gets a bump from the Venezuela thing. He might get a slight bump, but then a week from now, he'll be back in the 30%. The Republicans can see this. And so he's a lame duck. He's just a lame duck. And he's not going to get anything more accomplished in his term. We got 3 years of lame duckness, so to speak. And the longer he stays, the further the Republicans are going to push themselves away from him. You watch. He's not going to. People are not going to want him to show up in their districts and get his endorsements. They're just not going to.
No.
And with this is it. This is midterm season. It's starting soon, and he's going to handpick some MAGA people and put them up there, and they're going to sound fucking lunatic, crazy, and they're not going to have anything to run on. And it behooves the Democrats, wherever there's a MAGA person, to make sure there's a competent Democrat that runs against them, that can show the hypocrisy, that's willing to put the work in.
Here's one thing I don't understand. Joe Rogan supported Donald Trump because that's where he knew he could make money. He's just now
Absolutely.
seeing how stupid Donald Trump is and is acknowledging that on his program. He has tens of millions of listeners and viewers on the Joe Rogan podcast. People like you and me have been talking about this for 10 years. How come we don't have tens and millions of followers? I mean, and why does it take somebody like Joe Rogan or Republicans like Massey? Why does it take this long for them to realize what was obvious in the fucking first place?
Well, no matter how we put it, the Republicans have made this country into a tribal country. You're either
Yeah,
one tribe or you're the other. There's just no way around it. And you are part of your tribe, right or wrong. And they've used the culture wars to point out to their tribe, look at that tribe. They're filled with foreigners and dark people, and they're taking your jobs. And they have been pushing this message probably since Nixon. So
yeah,
Nixon kind of started it. He started the great movement away from Democrats to Republicans. And then Reagan came in, and it was the black welfare queen, and he managed to
yeah,
push it. And then George H. Bush came in and talked about the rapist killer guy from Massachusetts. I can't think of
yeah,
his name, and he pushed it. And then fucking Clinton came in, and what does Clinton become? A fucking neo-lib, a centrist. He starts
yeah.
taking in big money from the same Wall Street firms that the Republicans are doing. And he wins twice because he's telegenic and has a good line of bullshit. Uh,
Well,
we then go from Clinton, and then we move on to Obama at some point. Obama's a centrist, to be honest
yeah,
with you. He comes in with this great hope of getting universal health care. Three Democratic senators, three with insurance companies in their states managed to stop it, and we end up with the ACA, which is nothing more than a profit making machine for the insurance companies. And so the Democratic Party became basically Republican Party light. MAGA is completely different, right? It's an evolution from the Tea Party to what it is now. It's a hideous neo-Nazi, Christian nationalist, conspiracy theory organization that caters to the worst in people. But the
yeah.
money people don't give a shit because, one thing about Trump, when Trump was speaking in 2016, you got the sense that he is just speaking what is on his mind. He is not trying to, bullshit you with bullshit like other Republicans. And he's kind of funny. And fucking dumbheads think, well, he's funny. It's just locker room humor. I mean, but he's going to make my life better. And oh, by the way, he's going to get rid of the darkies on the other side. He's anti-darky. And his next one this term is even worse as
Yeah.
far as anti-immigration and eating cats and dogs and all the rest. He's still catering to those same people. Um, so we need there's no way to stop the hatred and the tribalism in this country. We've gone too far down. And logic and pointing to graphs and and saying, look at your pocketbook doesn't seem to work up to this point. So now it's up to Democrats. The only way we win is to increase our size and get out the numbers because we outnumber them. But part of our demographics are the young, and the young are fickle. They'll come out for Mandani, but if Mandani doesn't do well, then they won't come out for the next guy who happens maybe to be in the same party.
I think what we have to do is address the biggest problem and why the polling is down on the Democrats because they feel like the Democrats are weak. And the Democrats are weak. Not all of them, but most of them in the establishment are weak. They're like what you're saying. Well, I'll show you this chart and we're going to do this and GDP, that. People don't want to hear that. I've said before if you're going to be a Democratic politician, henceforth, at least through 2028, if you're not loud and proud and ready to fight and be a fucking warrior, you're not going to get their attention. That's why Jasmine Crockett gets as much attention as she does, or some of these other people. If you're not ready to step up and get in their face and spit in their eye, you're not going to win because they perceive you as weak. And if we got enough people doing that and we got our leadership that is weak, like Hakeem Jeffries and Schumer, the fuck out of there and get fighters in there, that will immediately change the perception of the Democratic Party and motivate more people to get out. But they got to recognize that and they've got to fucking do it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a viral video when Doge was big, right? Beginning part of his term. And here were a
Right.
bunch of Democratic representatives had gone to a building where Doge was, where Doge was these 20-year-old wonderkins, and outside was some security guard. And here are these weak ass old Democrats yelling at the security guard who's just standing there chewing gum, and they say, "You get out of our way. We're representatives. This is a federal building." And I still remember that image, and I was ashamed of being a Democrat at this point. Fuck, if I
Yeah.
was going to let that guy get in my way, no, if nothing else, they should have gotten law enforcement to come down and remove him. There were lawyers; they knew what their rights were. They are our representatives. Why can't they go into a federal building? They let this one fucking puny guy stop him. He had no respect for them whatsoever, and that was viral. And so the young get to see that. Why would they have respect for Democrats after seeing something like that?
It's all about perception, and that's a good example. Why did they just stand there? They went there for the photo op. You've got these members of Congress going to the detention camps. We've seen the ones where they've arrested a representative outside the place, but they by law have the right to go in and check on these places. We know people have gone on and checked in those places. They've come out and they've said, well, there's some bad shit going on. Why aren't they shutting them down? Why aren't they shutting them down? If we're committing crimes as a government in dealing with these prisoners, why aren't they shut down? It's real easy to walk up and say, oh, God, it's bad, and then walk and have lunch. That's what they fucking do. Um, those times are over now. People have gone through tons of shit for 10 years. They're ready to fucking fight. We got 7 million people go out on the streets because they're mad at Donald Trump and they protest. They aren't violent, thankfully for that. But I'm convinced too. Uh, people have asked me. People have asked me why do you get as many followers as you do? And I didn't really know at first, but then Donald Trump kind of cued me. When people like you or me or Eric or somebody go fuck that and go after people verbally anyway, they want somebody who's going to be, and I'm not saying I am, but they want somebody who's going to be their champion, that can do the things they want to do, say the things they want to say, but can't because of either the fact they don't have a platform or they're restricted because of where they work or whatever. They need fighters out there. We need Jasmine Crockett. I like Tallarico down in Texas. We need Jasmine Crockett. We need that fucking noise.
Yeah, we absolutely do. And we the old the old folks in the Democratic Party got to go, all of them. I
Have to.
expect to hear any time now that Schumer is going to not run. Hopefully AOC will run for his Senate seat. It's not a shoo-in that she'll win. I mean, she could win New York, but she's got to win the rest of New York State. And there are definitely pockets of conservatives in New York State, and she'll have big money going against her. And she has toned down her rhetoric a little bit,
Uh,
and has worked with her colleagues rather than just stand there and throw bombs. Um, but the fact is that we got a lot of work to do, but
oh,
we need to do the work because if we don't do the work, we see the result in letting the GOP run things. And I don't know how we strip members from the other tribe. You know, educated people probably this time around will probably come over and vote for Democrats. Independents will vote for Democrats, but the die-hard racist, low education, blue collar, some of them blue collar, for some reason they should be Democrats. The pro union people. How did we lose the pro union? Well, I can tell you how we lost them. We lost them during the Clintons' time
yeah,
because he was a fucking centrist.
yeah.
We need to get those workers back on our side. Those were big numbers. We need them back on our side. We need them hating the elite. And so I don't know how we firm that message. You and I guess talking is part of the overall message that's going out. But we got to hear from the Democrats. They've got to go against the elite, not just against Donald Trump. They've got to eat the rich constantly. Eat the rich, eat the rich, eat the rich, eat the rich. And then they got to have a little bit simpler message that they're all saying: universal health care, I don't know, immigration reform, Supreme Court reform, and then reform of the Congress through cutting back the money. Pick 5 or 6 big things that they're going to stand for, and everybody toe the line on those 5 or 6 big things.
Well, we have to shore up the economics in this country too by forcing wealthy people to pay at least their fair share. I
That's right.
realize that the rich people are going to work against it with money and stuff, but that really is truly the answer. If you've got a problem with Social Security, if you've got a problem with safety nets, if you've got a problem with anything, a lot of it can be at least started to be fixed by causing them to pay their fair share in taxes. Not
Yeah, which they
it looks like Tony jammed up there. We'll see if he comes back here in a moment. I don't know if he can still hear me. Um, Tony, if you can hear me, you're kind of frozen up here, so we'll see what happens, and I'll keep talking about it. I think we need to. I think we absolutely need to pressure our Democrats, as much as some of them may not like it because they get money from the wealthy people. The changes have to be made. There has to be universal health care. We know that every industrialized nation has it. We're the richest nation in the world. There is no reason why it should not happen. There's no reason why at all. Tony dropped off. He may pop back up here in a moment. We'll see what happens. But and they need to pay their fair share in taxes. Everybody cries and whines about Social Security. If everybody paid their fair share, the same percentage for Social Security, we wouldn't have a fucking problem. We wouldn't have a problem. Um, and they want to call them entitlements. And the fact of the matter is, we all paid for them. They are investments. We should expect a return on investment. Much like what I've said about taxes in general, we need to, we pay our fair share in taxes, the middle class and the lower class folks. Um, it's not crazy that we expect something in return for those taxes, but every time it comes about, we have Republicans and Democrats going, oh, geez, we can't afford that. We can afford $1 trillion for defense. We can afford giving $2 or $3 trillion tax credit to the wealthy, but you folks, God, that's just too far. That's just too much. And that whole mindset has to change. The Republicans have done a great job in terms of um, in terms of sending that message out and getting people to believe it. Uh, I don't know why. I don't know what's going on with that, or why they would be. Uh, People wouldn't be able to grasp what's really going on. You would think when you feel it in your pocketbooks and when you feel it uh, in your bank accounts, and you can't afford health care and you can't afford prescriptions. We know that 350 prescriptions are going up very soon. Donald Trump told us he would bring prescription prices down. Now, I know he's got this situation where he's going to have his own website where he's going to sell them cheap. Do you really want to buy prescriptions from Donald Trump? And do you think you're going to be treated fairly? I don't fucking think so. I just don't think so. Looks like Tony's coming back up. We'll see what's happening there. He's down in South Carolina.
I'm here.
Hey Tony, how you doing? We're coming
Yeah,
we're
so I'm
coming
not.
closer to
Yeah,
the end, but I knew you might pop back and you froze up there for a little bit, but you're back.
yeah. I shut off our Wi-Fi. I'm not sure what happened. I don't think that was the problem, but I'm not positive. So now I'm just running off straight cellular.
Yeah, no problem at all. I just continued to talk about, there's a lot of easy fixes to Social Security. One other thing that I think that we have to focus on too, and this is a big issue with the young people in this country. I think the cost of college and universities is too high. We're saddling kids with too much debt because when they get out of college or the university, they're saddled or a slave to this debt and they can't qualify for houses and cars and things like that. But we also have to do something. If we want the young people to understand and be involved, we've got to find a way that these people start getting paid reasonable amounts of money as opposed to poverty levels. You got a family of four and you're making 50 grand and you're in poverty. For fuck's
Yeah,
sake.
yeah. I was just talking to somebody who works at Chick-fil-A. They're up to $14 an hour, high school students, and it's not enough,
No, it's not
but
enough if you've got a family.
it's not. And they were talking about raising the minimum federal minimum wage to 15. It's not enough. It's not even close to being enough. I calculated the other day that you have to be making about $80,000 a year to live just okay. Apartments here in where I live in South Carolina run anywhere from 15 to $2,000. So these are, pretty new apartments. If you were to rent a small house, it's roughly the same. How do you do that on $24,000 a year? You can't, you
And
know.
what happens to the economy when all these young people, all us old people are retired, we're living in homes, we're living in condos, whatever, but we got all these young people, millennials and Gen Zs, and none of them can afford a house. What's that do to the
Not a one.
fucking economy?
Not a one. They can't afford to. They can't afford to buy, groceries. When I go to Publix, which is a big supermarket here, right? We got two Publix, a Kroger, a Walmart, and an Aldi's, and that pretty much sums it up. And a Lowe's Foods. It's all old people in there. Where are
Yeah.
the 20-year-olds? We're a college town. Where are the 20-year-olds? Where are the young couples that are married? Now maybe I go when they're not there, but I go into any of these things at night when they should be home. I'm not seeing them. Are they getting everything delivered, or are they getting the stuff to be picked up? Or are they just buying the cheapest stuff that they can buy at dollar stores just so they can feed their families to survive? I don't know. I
I
don't
will
know.
tell
I
you,
spent
I will tell you this. I have a millennial son and a millennial daughter-in-law, and they're fortunate because they both make really good money. They just bought a house. It's hard as anything for anybody. Now you're spending a lot of money on a house, but they're probably earning 2 or 3 times as much as my wife and I had to earn to have a house. Their payments are probably twice as much as what we were paying for a house. And for most people, your incomes haven't gone up at that rate. And that therein lies the problem. Now they're fortunate. I feel blessed that my kid and his wife and his they're fine. But I can't help but think about all the other people, all the other young people that are just struggling to fucking pay rent and buy food. I will tell you this about young people though. I spent the last 4 months, 5 months, um, going over to my son's house, and my wife and I would watch our new baby grandson. Okay. And it's fun as hell. We're going to be off for a few months now because she's got leave. but but in that time, every day, every fucking day, there are boxes being delivered to the front door. They bought a new house, so they got to get a bunch of stuff. They got a new babysitter, they got to get a bunch of stuff. But when it comes to groceries, they have the shit delivered. I think more and more young people are doing that just to avoid going out in the world. And personally, my wife hates going into grocery stores. I have a grocery store in my town. It's kind of like my second home. I'm there all the time. I feel
yeah,
comfortable
yeah,
there.
yeah,
I like
yeah.
going to the grocery store. I look
I do too.
forward to it. But a lot of people don't. And I think a lot of people are doing everything online. And I think that's sad because there's got to be some social interaction with people. Maybe that you don't know.
Yeah,
You bump into somebody, you start talking to them. I got a couple of guys that work at the grocery store I talk to every time. One guy named James. He's an African American guy. He's about my age. We're just talking shit about the old days all the time. I look forward to that. Fuck.
I agree. My daughter is a millennial as well, and that's how she does her groceries. They're either
Yep.
delivered or she goes and pulls into the parking lot and they're brought out to her car.
Right. Right.
And I don't. I personally, I'm like you. From my wife and I, it's an outing. They just put up a new Lowe's, and the Lowe's has a coffee bar in it that's like half the price of Starbucks. Great
Right.
coffee. We go there 2 or 3 times a week for a muffin and some coffee, and then we may leave Lowe's and run over to Publix, where I'll go to a chiropractor next door, and then and we go into Publix and we walk around. And to be honest, we sort of bitch about the old people who are like clogging the aisles with their buggies, and we do bitch about it, but we do enjoy the time together, just out and about, even if it's just to go to a store. But the prices are so high that I don't know how my son-in-law makes 22 bucks an hour. And so my daughter's had to go to work at, I think she's making 15 in a daycare. She works part-time. And then
Yeah.
she goes back and picks up her kids. They're a little bit lucky because basically they inherited a house. So that
Right.
it's an old
That's
mill
a
house.
huge deal.
We had a mill house here, right? So we have utilities, they don't are the only thing they pay. He just finished his car payment. I gave her a car, so I gave her a Honda, and so an old Honda Pilot. It's an old, so they don't have to pay a car payment. But they're still struggle with like food. It's just a family of four, two small kids. Now, grandma and grandpa, we send them a lot of stuff, but the stuff has gotten more ridiculously expensive. Like we will go to like I bought some jackets for the winter from TJ Maxx. I never thought I'd be shopping in TJ Maxx. I found some jackets at, $40 that I know were if I'd gone to Belk's, they would have been $120. So we're even us, we are looking for the deals. I really don't buy anything unless I look at it. If I see something on TikTok I want, I go to Amazon as much as I despise Amazon, and I'll go, okay, what can I get this at a better price, whatever it is. It's usually like vitamins or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, Life's expensive, and our young folks are being taken advantage of. I'm convinced they're being taken advantage of by corporations. The equity firms have taken over rental markets and housing markets, and they determine by statistics how much they can charge rent. And so long as there's somebody in there willing to pay, they've just priced out everybody else.
I think a good illustration as to how, and this is what the Democrats have to address. The stock market can be great, this can be great, that can be great, but if kids can't afford rent, they can't afford houses, they aren't making enough money, that has to be addressed. And it's perfectly illustrated. What you just described is pretty commonplace for those parents that can do it. There are more parents helping more kids than when we were young. Well, I was
Oh
23
yeah.
years old and we were struggling, had no money, but we figured it out. Um, there's no way to figure it out now. The numbers just don't work. The math
No,
doesn't come together.
I have a teacher's son who's 28 who lives with us. He has his own apartment because we had a mother-in-law suite built into this house. That's where he's living. So he's got his own bedroom, his own kitchen, um, and his own, of course, full bath. My other son is leaving the army so he can come back, finish his education, then go to medical school. He's going to have to work because he eats like a flock of seagulls. I mean, he just anything
Uh,
that's in there, he gets at, and he's gonna have to learn some rules or relearn some rules that he lost while he was in the army. He was here over the holiday, and let's just say he's a big presence in the house, and his girlfriend, well, his fiance is pregnant, so she's staying in Illinois to have her baby. I don't know how they can afford it. She just left her job. It was $7,000 out of her insurance. I think she's maintaining her insurance, so she's got to pay $7,000 out of pocket for to have a baby. So, and she's going to leave her job to try to apply for Medicaid in Illinois, and my son's got no money because he's leaving the army. So I mean, there's a good possibility she may come to live here with the baby, in which case, I don't know. I think I'm gonna go. I may buy an RV. Yeah, it's a lot to handle. But they were looking at apartments, and so they're gonna have to figure that out. They can't stay here permanently, and there's just no way that they're staying. The other son's a different thing. He's low maintenance. He's quiet. He doesn't have a girlfriend. He doesn't bring people to the house. He does his teaching, hangs out with his colleagues, then he comes home. But the bottom line is my house I built for $400,000 in 2010. It's valued at over $1 million right now. No
right.
kid can afford $1 million house. In fact,
Oh,
most
hell
people
no.
can't afford to buy. I pay taxes on 750,000. If that has happened to me, and that is happening across the country, we have priced them all out. I'm sure the value of your home has gone up since you bought the house a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have two condos and yeah, the value has gone up. But like I tell my wife says, how much is the condo in Georgia, the condo here gone up? I go, I don't fucking care because I'm not going to sell it. I'm going to
Right,
die and my kids can sell it. Well, we want as
right.
much for them as we can get. Dude, they got no money in it. Whatever they get is profit for them. So I'm not worried about what the value of the fucking place is.
That's the same here. 70 years old. They may have to wait about another 10 years before they get the house. All right,
Yeah.
and maybe they might have to wait for their mom to pass. But we're not selling the house. They're going to get the house at whatever value and put whatever work they've got to put into it. Because that is part of their inheritance. Is they can sell the house so they can live in it. I don't give a shit. I'll be dead at that point. But the country has lost its values, where you work hard and you can make something of yourselves. And it slowly is putting pressure on the workforce. AI is not going to be really good for people. It'll create some jobs, but it'll cost more jobs. And the Congress, which and the president, who are supposed to address these kinds of major structural changes in our society, they're not doing anything to do that whatsoever.
No.
And in fact, they're accelerating things by being buddy and buddies with the billionaires that own the things that are going to cause the problems.
Well, what you described with your situation is pretty commonplace. I know with us, my oldest son doesn't really need any help. He's 38, 39 years old. He's fine. My younger son's around 30. He lives with us right now because we told him to. He had an apartment and he was doing everything and it was tight and he doesn't have a lot of expenses, but it was kind of weighing heavy on his head. I said, what you need to do is you just fucking stay with us. Uh, Mom and I aren't home all that much anyway. Um, he happens to have an OCD about being clean, so my condo's never been cleaner ever in the history of time. Um, but it gives him a certain amount of comfort and it helps him to feel better about whatever's going on, and it doesn't
Just
bother us at
live
all. So,
and
yeah,
have
just
some
live.
money left over so he can actually have some fun.
But the problem is in 2028, we know the majority of people voting in this country will be millennials and Gen Zs. If you don't address their problems, you're going to be fucked. And the Democrats have an opportunity to address those problems. Republicans never will. But if the Democrats really want to take control of this and maintain control for a period of time, they're going to have to address those problems because not only are you not going to get their votes, the economy is going to go to shit because you're going to have the vast majority of people in this country that have no discretionary money or even enough money to survive. That's going to be a problem for the economy. That's going to be a problem for politicians. And the Democrats need to wake up and look at that and come up with a way to fix it.
Yeah, look. Gavin Newsom right now is probably the lead standard bearer, right? He's done a good job,
Yeah,
but he's not a man of big progressive ideas.
no,
He's he's closer to the middle than he is to my edge on the progressive side. That
yeah,
doesn't mean he can't come up with great ideas, but if he starts babbling, about an opportunity society like Kamala did, he's not going to do well against some smart person on the other side. But
no.
I do think I do think he's smart enough to understand that. But he cannot let himself be captured by the rich elite. He just can't,
Well,
And
he
yeah,
he
we need their
he may
money to win
already be
elections.
he may already be there. I mean, he's like a step ne or he's a step uh or no an in a nephew-in-law to Nancy Pelosi. He's
Yeah,
part of that whole fucking thing. And
yeah,
and I don't know about you, but based on history, anybody who peaks 3 years from the election doesn't usually end up being the nominee.
yeah. If I had to pick right now, I'd probably pick Pritzker. Pritzker guy has his own money.
Yeah,
He's a billionaire. He's kind of like my lead choice right now. He says the right things. He's done pretty well in his own, which is a hard state to run in Illinois.
yeah.
He's resisted, and I think, but he's not a progressive either. I mean, he's not but he's just not a progressive. I don't think we can get a progressive in 2028. To be honest, I can't. I don't see one in the
Hard.
woodworks.
It's hard to say that though because like I say with Gavin Newsom, people say, "Oh, he's going to be the nominee." There's a lot of shit that's going to change in the next three
Oh
years.
yeah, yeah,
Donald
you're
Trump,
right.
Donald Trump will be dead. We maybe have control of the House and the Senate. The whole attitude of the country might change. If the Republicans are smart, once Donald Trump's is gone, they try to rehab themselves. the perfect thing for them to do is say, you know what, let's do this uh, universal health care. They want to get
Yeah,
attention back to them, fucking do it. Now I
yeah,
know it
yeah,
works against them with regards to lobbyists and stuff, but there's gonna. I think what we see in politics today is going to be dramatically different in 2028, and it's impossible to predict what it's going to look like and what the country is going to
yeah,
feel like because we're going to have a lot of young people in control now. It's one thing for you and I to think back what it's done for the last 30 years. I just think it's going to look totally different in
yeah.
2028.
Do you think a woman has a chance of being a nominee or should be the nominee? We've
Today,
had this talk before. We've had it before on the podcast. Yeah,
today, I don't think so
and I
because
agree
they
with you.
should.
I don't think so.
But 3 years from now, it depends on what happens. I
Yeah,
don't know. That's why I'm saying, today Gavin Newsom looks like a good nominee, but the world may look different. The country may look different in 2028. So I personally think what will happen, like what usually happens, somebody after the midterms will kind of emerge and catch
yes,
fire,
yes, I
and
agree
that
with
will be
that.
the person. I think that's probably what will happen.
That'll be,
I don't
but
know
at
who
least
that
we'll
would
have a
be.
real primary this time.
Yeah.
We won't have an anointment. I mean,
I mean,
so it'll be a contest of ideas.
who knows between now and 2028, something may happen big with um, AOC. She becomes a hero for doing something. She becomes a Senate. Well, that Senate seat isn't up until 28, so she would probably run for the presidency. She's running for the Senate, but but we've seen people kind of catch fire in politics, not to the level that I'm talking about. A good presidential candidate would be Jamie Rashkin.
Oh, I love Jamie Raskin. Yeah, I think he'd be a great. He certainly would be my number one choice if he decided to run. To be
Yeah.
honest with you, I think the guy's brilliant. The only problem with him is his health issues.
Well, there you go. That's that's
Right,
that's one issue you have to look
right.
at. But there are other people. We've heard of this Andy Bashir down in Kentucky. He seems like a viable
He-
thing, but he seems more of a centrist too.
yeah,
I
I don't
think
want another Clinton.
no,
You
no,
know, to be honest with you, I'm tired of Southerners. I mean, this might sound the most bigoted thing. Oh, and I'm tired of Southerners. I live down here. I see a lot of them. Give me a good progressive Northeaster. Give me somebody from Maine. I don't even want somebody from California. Give me somebody from New England. You know, I'll take a Midwesterner as a second person, somebody practical, somebody smart, and hopefully somebody progressive. That comes from the people.
no. Everybody loved Tim Walz, and now we're going through this fraud thing, which is all bullshit. I don't know
It
how
is
he comes
bullshit.
out of that. He's running for governor in 2026. He'll probably win, I would think. The Republicans are just fucking goofs. But I don't see Tim Walz as a viable nominee for president. I don't. It's not that I don't think he's a smart guy. It's not that I don't think he has the ability to be a good president. I think, like Kamala, he would be a great president. I just don't think he has the
Fire in the
personality,
belly, as Colin Powell
maybe the
said.
maybe fire in the belly, and I think he played a good sidekick to Kamala. But he's one of these guys that kind of makes mistakes now and again. He speaks out, doesn't think about it, and that may hurt him in the end. I think if I was to say today, no, a woman, a black woman especially, could not win the election in 2028. But I don't know what 2028 looks like, you know?
Yeah. I will say this. We have a better bench than they have.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Money wise, you know, 2028 is going to be a $5 billion election, probably.
yeah,
2026 is probably going to be a $2 billion election,
yeah.
and but we got to spend the money, and maybe you need the Wall Street guys just to get that kind of money just to be in the game. I don't know, but it just seems that where money is, it's corruptive. And now all of a sudden you owe favors, and I think that's going to be the problem for a lot of progressives when they win is that there are entrenched organizations wherever they win that don't really care about politics. They just care about their own memberships and their own interests. So,
Right.
we'll see in 2 years whether Mandami is able to get anything other than a couple stores and maybe some free, bus rides that he takes out of his own budget. But I don't I don't know that he can
It
be
almost
our
does.
standard bearer.
No, I don't think he's a standard bearer by any means. He's too young. He's too inexperienced. I just like the message it sent when in New York City you got this democratic socialist. It kind of normalized that idea.
Yeah,
Bernie was a or is a democratic socialist. I think the Republicans have done a good job of making the word socialism evil, uh, which is ridiculous because we've had socialism in this country for decades and decades. Social
yeah, oh,
Security,
absolutely.
Medicare.
Since yeah, Social Security. The best mayor in my lifetime of New York City has been Mike Bloomberg, in all
Yeah,
honesty. Rich guy, not really flashy in any sense. Personally, I kind of think he'd be a good president. I don't think he can get there from here. He just doesn't have enough of a personality. But he's
no,
competent, you know. But he was a good
yeah.
mayor. They were lucky to have him for those years.
Well, and Pritzker, being that he's a billionaire, and why that might put people off because it's time to eat the rich, his personality and his track record might give him a little more power in the presidency because he has his own money, because he has a lot of money, and he can stand up to some of these oligarchs
Yeah,
that might put
yeah,
pressure on somebody.
he's a connected guy like Roosevelt was in the 30s.
Yeah,
Rich guy became the president, right? And but well connected, very wealthy, patrician family. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Pritzker. Right now, Pritzker is the guy for me. I mean, nothing against Newsom, and I'd be happy to support Newsom, but Pritzker is the guy that I kind of lean towards.
I think that Gavin Newsom's too slick, like you say, like Bill Clinton, and people are afraid of people that may be establishment and too slick. Pritzker, as much as he's a billionaire, looks like an average Joe. He
It's like
talks
a
like
guy,
an average
yeah, it
Joe.
looks like a guy you'd see on the subway,
Yeah, exactly.
riding to work from, the suburbs. Yeah, that's what he looks like. Man, I mean, look, we got a long ways to go. We got the 20, we got to survive this week. Never
Yeah.
mind to the, you know what I mean? We got to survive this week. There's going to be a week of hell. The thing that I'm looking for is not so much his actions, but where the polls are at the end of the week. And if he continues to sink, I mean, I don't know how much lower you can go. Um, that's a good thing. If I'm going to look for further splinter, and that's my goal this week is to look at further splintering amongst the MAGA base. Pay attention a little bit more to the right because you know, to be honest, they're the ones that we're gonna stop things from happening because the GOP will be looking at the impact of the polls and on those MAGA influencers. I see what's her name, who was the public face. I can't think of her name. The blonde. I think she left. Supposedly she's pregnant. Oh, geez, what's her name?
Caitlin.
Yeah, Caitlin. Um, thank God for her going. I mean, but I think she left because the writing's on the wall.
I think, well, that's the other thing. We're probably, now that we're past the holidays and into the first of the year and going into the primary season, we may see a bunch of Republicans just bolt now. That
Who do
would
you,
be the
who do,
smart thing.
who do you think is the first guy that'll get fired? First person. Shouldn't say guy.
Person on the administration,
Yeah. Who do you think will be the first cabinet member to step down?
probably Cash, only because
Okay.
Bongino's already doing that. And Cash is probably just as nervous as Bongino. If you ever seen him in a hearing, he's just a fucking train wreck.
He's awful. So you
Yeah.
think he would go before Bondi or Christy Nome?
Well, Christine O might go first too. I think Bondi may want to go, but I think Donald Trump needs Bondi at this point.
You
And
take one, I'll
Bobby's,
take the other. I think you're right. I think it's between Noam and Patel. That's who I
yeah,
think.
yeah,
I'll
I think
go.
so too.
I'll go with Patel. You go with Noam. The next time we talk, we'll see which one of us was right.
That's all right. You know, when she came out and praised Donald Trump for keeping the hurricanes off the mainland of the United States, I go, that's my girl. Dumb as
That's
fuck.
dumb as fuck, and with a Mar-a-Lago face to boot. You
Yeah,
know?
absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're going to
Yeah.
wrap up the Rational
Yes,
Boomer
sir.
podcast. We've been here
Yes,
for a
sir.
while. I know you got other things to do, and I
Yep.
don't,
Go to
but
bed.
go to bed. Yeah, I got to do that too. Well, thank you for joining us on the Rational Boomer podcast. As always, you're welcome anytime. Just text me and say, "Let's do it," and we can do it. Tell people where they can find you because you're
Yeah.
out there on social
First of all,
media
for
too.
folks that don't know, Mike and I are more than just, this show. We're actually friends. I mean, we look forward. We talk before we come on air about our families and swap stories. And, I truly, truly am honored to have him as a buddy. Um, I'm not a big influencer, but if you go to Blue Sky, I'm on Blue Sky under T Night 02. I've got about 33,000 followers. Um, I've listened to people talk about journalists talk, from very other podcasts talk about why they're not on Blue Sky, and they say it's because everybody there is the same, and we're all bitching and moaning about the same things. And you know what? That's exactly why I'm on Blue Sky. I wouldn't go
Yeah.
to a cesspool like Twitter
No.
or X for any amount of money. I'm not a journalist. I don't need to get side opinions. I want to hear more putting down the administration and a little bit of news that I can get from there, but I get news from a lot of different sources. So again, T902 on Blue Sky, you can see my face right here. Look for the face that's in my picture. If you're interested, I take a lot of stuff off of uh, different sources, news, TikTok. I take a lot of video from there if it's relevant, and I post it over to Blue Sky with my own spin on whatever we're looking at. And it seems to have worked for me. So, 33,000 followers is not bad for somebody who really doesn't give a shit if he's an influencer or not.
Well, that's
And
that.
that's
Yeah,
it.
that's impressive. So check out Tony. Say the handle again because you said it fast. I don't know if
It's
people got it.
TNITE 02 at Blue Sky. So
Okay.
T Night at Blue Sky. So I think that was my porn name in a different life. So
Yeah, my poor name was Rational Boomer. It didn't go well.
no,
Um,
it didn't go well for me either.
it
Anyway,
wasn't
so that's
something
that's
that
where you
worked.
can find me. I just put up my website for my lightsaber school. I'm always honored by anybody becoming a member at Aiken Saber Academy, and that's on Facebook. I have a group there. I post a lot about my teenagers. It's a city program. We're connected to an assortment of lightsaber type sports around the world. So if there's something going on in the world in lightsaber sports, I post it. But I post, for my own name, Anthony Negron. If you look up Anthony Negron, I'd also be honored if you become a friend of mine there as well. I post a lot of stuff about animals and videos and my dogs and my cats, all family related stuff. No politics. I don't do politics on Facebook. Run a couple other groups besides Aiken Saber Academy. I run one that's dedicated to lightsaber instructors around the world, and I run Justin Beaver and Friends, which is a wildlife Facebook group. So I take video from every source that has to do with wildlife. It's always informative. It's always warm. Uh, Very child friendly. So look for Justin Beaver. The name came from a beaver that was rescued around here, and I got to hold him. And I never thought beavers were cuddly and cute until I met Justin. And we did release him to a local rescue where he ended up with a bunch of other beavers.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't get enough of people saying "fuck Trump," you know where to find me.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, we'll say good night now, and thank you everybody for putting up with us.
All right. Thank you very much. Those of you listening, thanks for taking the time. Hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.